Some champions require years of practice, mechanics, and mastery to fully understand. Pantheon is not one of them. Welcome to today's lesson. Today we'll be dissecting a brain sculpted not by science, but by pure testosterone, bloodlust, and cooldown timers. The Pantheon player is quite simple. They are bold, and they are loud. And deep down, they truly believe they are the main character in every one of your ranked games, whether they're carrying or running it down. Their brain doesn't work quite the same way as every other character. They speak in alt pings, and they think in spears. But what really goes on inside the mind of a Pantheon player? What really motivates his every tower dive, flash W, and heroic death? Today we peel back the layers of the Pantheon brain, and it all begins with a very specific and dangerous instinct. This is the kill confirm cortex. As you probably already know, Pantheon's Q crits and attempts to execute anyone under 20% health. This is the part of the Pantheon player's brain that overheats the moment an enemy drops below 20% health. This is a primal instinct and a magnetic pull for the Pantheon players. Regardless of distance, risk, or moral consequence, they must execute that player. And it leads them into places with a spear that most people wouldn't even go with a gun. This part of the brain creates scenarios such as flashing under the tower to Q a Jhin on 3 HP, ignoring the Nautilus who hooks him a second later. Or ulting behind the enemy tower just to finish off somebody that was low. Or even ulting into a 1v5 just to throw one spear and secure a kill, only to die a second later. The kill confirm cortex is always active and always watching. And Pantheon players believe they always have the right to steal your kill. Even if they pretend to be sorry afterwards, the Pantheon player knows what they did, and they will happily do it again next time, solely due to the urge of the kill confirm cortex. And the best part of it all? Even if the Pantheon player dies, even if the play was utterly deranged, this region of the brain will justify it instantly. But this need to assert dominance through executions is actually just the first sign of something much deeper and far more delusional. After the Pantheon player acquires just a taste of that kill credit, it leads us into the next part of the brain, the Sigma Spartan Center. This is where Pantheon players fully unlock their Giga Chad persona. The voice lines suddenly hit harder, the camera pans slower, and everything they do in the game is just a further declaration of their strength. But deep down, it's all bravado. Because while this part of the brain claims to be fearless and unbreakable, it also happens to be the first region to press E and run full speed in the opposite directions when things get spicy. The same Pantheon player who just solo dove the tower and typed skill diff in chat is suddenly the one ulting across the map to avoid the Fed Hecarim. The Pantheon player, of course, will never admit this to anyone, including themselves. In their minds, they are a true stoic Giga Chad warrior. They believe they are the real-life, lore-accurate manifestation of Pantheon himself. Because in their mind, they never die in vain. They can only die like a hero. And in their head, it did seem fearless when they ulted in and started the fight. But in reality, this part of the brain is running on 80% ego, 20% danger awareness, and 0 shame. So while they may be the first one to start the fight, when faced with the consequences of their actions, they will also be the first ones to leave if given the option. But the Pantheon player themselves, of course, will never see it this way. And now we move on to the third part of the Pantheon player's brain, the lane abandonment protocol. This is located in the back of their brain next to attention span, which coincidentally is also underdeveloped. You see, at some point, usually right after missing a cannon or laning against an enemy that just won't fight them, the Pantheon player then enters a restless and fidgety state. They begin pacing under their tower, shaking their camera violently across the map, and then that's when it happens. He's gone. Not figuratively, but literally. This is the moment where Pantheon decides he's too important for laning. A minor skirmish breaks out bot lane, he's there. Enemy jungler ganks mid, he's already channeling his ult. If the enemy support so much as sneezes under their tower, Pantheon books a one-way ticket. Because it doesn't matter to the Pantheon player if there's no real opportunity available. Because Pantheon would rather be doing anything than laning. And the best part is, no one asked for Pantheon to ult. In most of these situations, they would have been fine without Pantheon showing up at all. And the Pantheon players believe they are truly selfless for looking out for their teammates. Even if it means he dies to their lane and then doesn't go back the rest of the game. And Pantheon players will never deprive themselves the opportunity to do this. Even if the enemy Nasus gets to crash 3 waves top lane uncontested, the Pantheon player considers it worth as long as he goes at least 1 for 1. And this is also a great time to mention that Pantheon players, at least true Pantheon players, always run Ignite. When they chose to ult across the map, they knew they weren't going back with teleport. So whatever play they are now forced to create has to be worth more than whatever they lose. And most often, it isn't. But at least the Pantheon player was able to avoid the greatest tragedy of all. Simply playing through their lane phase. But the greatest tragedy to me would be if you watched this video without liking and subscribing. I plan on making a video like this for every League champion eventually, and Pantheon happened to get the most votes after the last video. So while you're here, comment down below who I should do this for next, and I might just pick it. And it is said that the average Pantheon player's ego goes up slightly for each like on this video, which leads us then into the next part of Pantheon's brain. This is known as the spear point syndrome. We spoke in the last part about how Pantheons will ult for just about anything, but they can't aim just anywhere. They need to land the pixel-perfect ultimate that hits the spear before they come crashing down. Pantheon's ultimate is meant to be a powerful engage tool. It's a way to split fights and secure kills, and it already does a great job at doing that. The problem is, there's a little mini-game that Pantheon players soon find out about. If they aim their ult perfectly, they can get a little bit of extra damage with a slow if they land the spear. In 90% of cases, it is not detrimental to actually land this spear. Some players who haven't played Pantheon may not even realize that it happens, but to Pantheon players, it means everything. And the goal here isn't impact, it's style points. This often leads them to ulting into the wrong position just because they were trying to land the spear. They could have just ulted behind the enemy safely so they couldn't escape, but this part of the brain doesn't let them do that, because if that spear actually lands, the Pantheon player's ego inflates like a balloon. But if they completely miss, they'll still say it was calculated and it was just a zoning ult. And this mentality leads us into the final part of the brain, the Spartan ego core. You see, as I've just mentioned, once the Pantheon players learn how to hit their skill shots reliably, they develop one of the largest egos capable by any character in League. You see, Pantheon as a character doesn't scale into late game, but the ego of a Pantheon player most definitely does. If they've had a good game where they got fed, sniped you with some ults, and landed a few long-range Qs, it gets to a point where they believe they've never missed at all. This is one of the most delusional traits of a Pantheon player. You would think with a character as feast or famine as Pantheon that they would remember the games where they didn't get fed. And for a champion who has a point-and-click stun that does 90% of the work for him, you would think the players would be a bit more humble. The Pantheon player, of course, doesn't care, because they've never missed, and they're too gigachad and stoic to respond to you when you point it out. They're too busy slaying gods and carrying you through the early game to care. At least that is, until late game comes around. And this concludes today's study on the Pantheon player's brain. So now next time you see a Pantheon in your game showcasing these behaviors, you'll know why. Comment down below who we should study next, and subscribe for more knowledge.